Been working on the 86 2500 square body truck all winter, and I've got it about half done now. I got the motor, transmission, transfer case, both axles rebuilt. I even have the drive shaft in. So I'm getting ready to start this thing up. Got the exhaust all done. But before I put the gas tank in, I need to get these step bars mounted because they go underneath the gas tank. The brackets do. So I'm making custom brackets for this. All right, so starting out in the front here, the first piece I'm gonna make is just a flat piece of metal. And I drilled 3 holes in it and I bolted to the frame right there. So that's 4 inches wide and 5 inches deep. And these dimensions, where I'm gonna make this at, allow the bars to sit low enough that they'll clear the fuel tank on the other side. So if you wanted your bars to be tucked up higher, this wouldn't work, but these are gonna be my dimensions. The second piece is gonna be a section of my 1x3 steel. That's going to get welded on right at the bottom of that plate there, and then this bracket down here will get welded to that. So this is 11 inches long. All right, so I got this frame plate and this tube welded together, and then the bracket for the bar is welded onto it at the bottom. And so now the next thing is I'm going to put a gusset in here and weld it in just like that for strength. And just like that, we got that gusset all welded up. Now I'm going to make one more gusset right here against this plate. That'll add extra support for that. That's the plate that the actual tube mounts to. The last part to this bracket was just to put a plate underneath on the bottom. So that's welded on, and that gives me a way to bolt it to the bottom of the frame rail as well. This front bracket is done now. So it's bolted to the frame there, and we got a big gusset here, and we've got gussets underneath, and we're bolted on the bottom of the frame and in the side of the frame. So that part's done, it's level. So now it's time to move back and make a frame or make a bracket at the back. Here we are in the back, and you can see that front bracket is in up there. So that's holding nicely. Now we got a pretty good gap to fill here between there and the frame. So on this side, I'm kind of lucky because I'm not running dual fuel tanks on this truck. I got a 20-gallon fuel tank that's going on the driver's side. That 20 gallons is going to be more than enough for our needs in this truck. I don't have any need to be hauling 40 gallons of fuel around. So we've got a big opening here that we don't have to put a fuel tank in. So that means I can try and put one of the strongest shapes in nature, triangle. I think I'm just going to try and make a big triangle right here. So time to get to work on that. In the back, we start out with a plate. Comes down about that far, and the rest of that distance will be taken up with this bar, this tube. So this is a 1x3 steel tubing. So I'm going to weld that on there, and then we'll make the next part. Now this rectangle tubing that I'm using to make the braces, it's a 1x3 tubing. That might look small, but let me tell you, I don't know if you can tell on camera, but that's some really heavy duty stuff. This piece here at probably 4 feet long could probably support 500, 600, 800 pounds. Even though it's only 1 inch thick, it's super, super strong. Okay, I got that bar tack welded on there. The next part is gonna be this bar. It goes right here. So I'll make sure that's nice and level, and I'll tack weld that in place. All right, last piece in this puzzle. Going to be this piece to complete that triangle. So I think that's going to be pretty strong, and then we'll put a plate under here too so I can put bolts up through the bottom of the frame. But I'm going to go ahead and get this tack welded in. Okay, I've got this mounted up. Here's what this bracket looks like in the back. I've got bolts going in here, 4 bolts, and then this big triangle. I've got it gusseted on the bottom on both sides, and then bolted up through the frame on the bottom right there. So that's the rear brace, and the front brace is up there. So let's try and stand on this thing and see how much it moves. Oh, that feels really solid. truck moves. I can feel the suspension moving, but I don't feel the bar moving. That's great. This truck is so dang tall, the big lift on it. It's going to be even taller with the big tires on it. It'll be impossible to get in there without that bar. So that's great. I like that. Time to move on to the other side. I think the hardest bracket to make is going to be this one that has to go kind of underneath the fuel tank. And I didn't film all the cutting and welding here, but basically these step bars come with brackets that look like this. So there's just a bolt that goes through into the bar, and then they have kind of a flat surface here. So I needed to make something that I could weld to the top of this. So my idea here was basically just to make kind of a big L. So there's a bracket that bolts to the frame here, and then kind of a leg that comes down, and then another leg that comes out. And I've got a gusset on there to make that stronger. And then this plate bolts to the frame here, and also bolts underneath. So that is really strong. That doesn't move at all. But even as an extra support, there's these two bolts that stick down from underneath the fuel tank brackets. So I made a little crossbar to go across, and that bolts up to those bolts too. So that'll give this bar a little bit of extra strength kind of right here in the middle. So we'll see once I stand on these if there's any flex. If there's any flex, I might have to put kind of a triangular brace behind that to eliminate the flex, but we'll see. So this is my idea for this rear bar that goes underneath the fuel tanks. And now I'm starting to work on the front brace. This one doesn't have to drop down as far, so I basically just made a plate that goes kind of in this pocket made by the cab mount. I bolted that in, and then I put a separate plate that bolts in through the side of the cab mount since there was a hole in it. And then I've got my kind of my L leg coming out here. I'll probably put a gusset right here, a triangle to brace that, and then we'll see. And I'll put a plate on the back of here that can bolt up into the bottom of the frame too. So this will bolt in from the front and from the bottom. And then we'll see how stiff that is. So let's keep going. Okay, I got the front bracket installed on here now. This is what it looks like. It's basically just an L. I've got a gusset here for strength. There's 3 bolts that go in the face of the frame. There's one that goes in the side here. There's a hole there already. And then I've got 2 of them going up from the bottom. So basically just a glorified L. So we're going to stand on this and just test it for flex. Definitely got a little bit of flex. Not terrible. I weigh about 200 pounds, so it holds me fine. But I do feel a little bit of flex there. I think the game plan for right now is I'm going to make a gusset like that one for this bracket back here, because that'll need to be welded on. I don't want to have to come back later and do any welding once the fuel tank is in. So I'm going to make a bracket and weld that on a gusset. And then later on, if I ever needed to, I could come back and make a brace that goes from here at kind of a triangle up to that frame rail there. And I could just bolt that on down here somewhere and up there. So that wouldn't require welding. But we'll gusset this, see how it feels, and I think that's going to be it for now. Because I want to get this fuel tank in here and get fuel lines run and get this thing started up soon. Hopefully that'll give it a little extra stiffness. I'll let that cool down and I'll paint it. But I think worst case scenario, if these kind of flex over time and feel kind of spongy, I've seen those single steps that people hang down from here, and they look like they just bolt onto the pinch weld. So worst case scenario, I could come out here and just make a little rod that bolts onto the pinch weld and comes down here and attaches to the pipe. Something small, not very noticeable. And that would take all the flex out of it, but I think these are pretty good for now. I'm pretty happy with this. I like the way these look a lot. Here's how far I have them sticking out from the cab. They're just out a little ways when you look from the top down. And I think once the fender is on, you won't see that bracket under there. So these are gonna look great. I like these a lot better than the single step that hangs down. And they're bolt on, so I can remove them. And the brackets are all bolt on. I didn't weld anything to the frame all the way around. So if I ever want to remove these, I can just unbolt the brackets. Now these things look great right now. They're stainless steel and they're polished. However, they were 150 bucks on Amazon or somewhere in that neighborhood. So I'm fully prepared for them to probably not be the greatest quality. They'll probably get beat up over time. They might scratch easily, I don't know. So I think what I might actually do is just order another set of the exact same thing right now and just leave them in the box. That way 4 or 5 years from now, if they don't even sell this kind anymore, I'll still have a set that's the exact same thing with the same bolt spacing and everything, and it'll bolt right up. So that's the advantage of not welding anything on here. I can detach these if they get beat up, put the new set on at any time, and they'll bolt right in the same spot. So that's the plan. So now that these steps are on and the brackets are all made, now it's time for the fuel tank to go in. So that'll be next. Thanks for watching this one, and we'll see you in the next one.